Great, so let's take a look at section 7.2 homework regarding similar polygons. Number 9 asks us to list all the pairs of congruent angles and write a proportion that relates the corresponding sides for each pair of the similar polygons. All right, so if we take a look at this, we should probably be able to do this without even looking at the picture, although the picture is helpful. But so if we look at J here and P there, then what that should tell us is that angle J is going to be congruent to angle P. If we look at H and Q, angle H should be congruent to angle Q. If we look at angle F and angle S, angle F should be congruent to angle S. And then angle M should be congruent to angle T. Now, if we go to look at the proportion of the sides, how we start this dictates kind of how we're going to go through it. I'm going to erase this here. I'm going to start here with JH, and so this is going to be my numerator, and so I'm going to say that JH, and then I'm going to come over here, and this would be PQ, and that is going to be equal to, if I go next and say HF, and that would be to QS. And if I keep going, FM, and that is ST. And then the last one here is the first and the last. So that is going to be JM, and that's going to be with PT. Okay, so there we have all of our angles that are corresponding, and then a proportion that relates all of the sides. And so when we look at the next one here, number 11, it can be very similar, except now we have a triangle, so we're looking at 3 angles. So we would say that angle D is congruent to angle K, so D to K, and that angle F is congruent to angle M, and angle G is congruent to angle J. And if we look at the sides here, we're going to be able to say that if we start here, I'm going to start with DF. Erase it, doesn't look like a D. DF. And that would be to KM. And that is going to equal, if we use next, FG. That is going to be MJ. And then next is that one that's the first and the last. So DG. And that is going to be to the first and the last, which is KJ. KJ. Okay, so 9 and 10, we're just picking out those those corresponding angles and then writing the proportion of the sides. All right, so if we look at the next few here, it says determine whether each of the pair of figures are similar. If so, we need to write the similarity statement and then the scale factor. If not, we have to explain our reasoning. All right, so if we look here at number 12, if I start to look at the angles, now hopefully your copy is a little bit better. If not, you can go to the book. But what we would say about the angles is that, yep, we have this angle congruent to this angle. They're both 90 degrees. But what we find very quickly is that angle M is not congruent to angle W, and that angle L is not congruent to angle W. So our answer for this one, number 12, is no, they're not similar, and the reason is because not all angles are congruent. If we look at number 12, now number 11, or number 12, I started with the angles. I could have very easily did the sides first, but if I saw very quickly that those angles were not congruent, there's no reason for me to go to the sides. Okay, so let me pull to number 14 here. And number 14, when I look at this, I can see that I have an angle congruent to this angle, and I have an angle congruent to this angle, and I have this angle congruent to this angle. So those are vertical angles. So part of the way there, my angles are congruent. I then have to check the sides. So if I look at the sides here, I need to figure out what the scale ratio is. And so if I look at the smallest one here erase that. Look at the smallest one here to the smallest one here, that is 3/4. If I keep going then and match up the next one, we have 4 over the 16/3, and so that is actually going to reduce and be 3/4 also. And then our last one, we're going to have 5 over 20/3, and that's going to reduce and be 3/4. So for this particular one, our scale factor is 3/4. And now we have to say the similarity. And so this is where the color kind of helps me pick a starting point and stay consistent with it in the next triangle. So I am going to say CSD. CSD is similar to triangle, and I'm going to go here and go CFG. Okay, so yes, they were similar, and we have the scale factor there. If we look at the next one, number 15, all the angles are congruent, so that part is true. Let's look at the sides. If we look here, this is going to be 6 over 4, and that reduces to 3/2. This is going to be 8 over 6, which reduces to 4/3. And so therefore, that no, those sides are not proportional, and so therefore the figures themselves are not similar. All right, so 18 and 20, we're just looking for x, so we're setting up proportions and solving. And so for 18, we're going to have x plus 5, and that's going to be over 15. So x plus 5 over 15. And then that is going to be equal to the 4/5. And so we're going to cross multiply and use the distributive property here. Cross multiply here. We're going to take and subtract 25 from both sides. And divide. Sorry, doing that in my head already. And get x is equal to 7. And then number 20, we're told that they're similar. And so we're going to set up our proportions. We're going to have 8x minus 1. And that's going to be over 12. And that is going to equal 3x minus 1 over 4. And so I'm going to do cross multiplication here. That's going to give me 36x minus 12. And this is going to equal 32x minus 4. When I move the 32 over, that's going to give me 4x equals 8. And x will equal 2. And then the last one we had to do was number 20. Number 28, if you went further than that, don't worry about it. Number 28 was the last we had to do. So if we look here, we are told that they have a scale of 3 to 2. So that's telling me my scale factor already. And the perimeter of the small rectangle is 50. And so this was obviously the large to the small. And so we don't know the large, but we know the small rectangle perimeter is 50. And so if we cross multiply and divide by 2, we're going to see that that is 75 units squared. Doesn't give us the units in the problem there for the, it's area, so just units.